Hello, I'm Betty Swann, and welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you get help for the tough decisions in your life. Tonight I have a great guest. She is the founder and president of Raising a Generation of Esther's Foundation, which is a means to provide education for young girls in West and Central Africa. Welcome, Favour Ikome. Favour, it's just great to know you. You're young. Now, how old are you? 20?
I'm 27.
27 years old and already going at life and been going at it for a long, long time.
I have.
Tell us about your background.
Thank you so much for having me, Betty. I'm so excited and I'm so humbled to be here tonight. Before I go into my background, I want to say the things I'm going to share tonight are things that I probably haven't really shared with a lot of people for cultural reasons, because some of the things sound like you're coming against your culture, or you just want to put yourself in a position to attract pity, but I don't have any reason to attract pity. I really just believe that by the end of tonight, somebody's life is going to be transformed by the stories and experiences that I'll share with you. So I was born and raised in Cameroon, Central Africa. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. We grew up in a family where my mother and father fought all the time.
Fought all the time?
All the time. I watched my parents fought to the point where neighbors would come into our home 3 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning to take us out of the house or to separate my parents from fighting, and my dad was always drinking. And that was the reason why they fought. They might have other marital issues, but the main thing I always saw happen was that my dad was never sober, so they always fought. And as a child growing up in that situation, my parents didn't make it any better for me. I was treated like the maid in the family. I was young, like pretty young, but I felt like my siblings were the children in the home, and I was the child that was brought in from somewhere. My parents would beat me up when I make mistakes. I was severely punished. It was more of punishment than correction. So I didn't have a regular childhood. I know your children probably made mistakes and you correct them, you put them on timeout, but my own case was worse than timeout. It wasn't timeout. It wasn't reprimanding me for my wrongs. I felt like I was paying for something that I did not know about. And not long from those years, my parents separated. My dad and my mom went separate ways, so my mom took custody of us. In Africa, there are no laws for custody. I never really see people fighting over their children in court. Like, they decide, you want to keep the children, fine, those are your kids. So my mother took us with her, and my dad, we never heard from him. But my other family from my mother's side was very, very supportive of my mom having us. They loved us, but still I didn't feel loved by my family, but I didn't know what to ascribe to it. I mean, now that I'm older, I realize that was a very bad situation for a child, but then I knew that was normal. That was life. That was how you get corrected. That was how you get disciplined. That was how, that was the best way to be loved. I'll always hear my mother say things like, you're not good enough. You're good for nothing. If not for your grandmother that I respect so much, I would have taken you to your dad. I don't even know why I'm keeping you. So I always saw the privilege that my siblings enjoyed and I didn't enjoy it. And sometimes I'll look through the window and wish that a family will walk through that door and be like, this child was ours, you know? So I went through those experiences, and then my mom took ill when I was 11 years old. She got severely sick and passed away into my teenage years. When I was 13 years old, she finally passed away, and this opened up a different new experience of my life. Even though she didn't treat me as her daughter the way I thought my mother was going to treat me, I still had a love for my siblings. And I don't know why, you know, she never made us feel like we were siblings. So I had every reason, I mean, legitimate reason, and somebody out there might be listening to this and say, I don't love my family, I don't love my siblings, and they don't understand why. You can trace that back to how that particular person has been treated. But in my own case, for some reason, I loved my siblings. Immediately I found that my mom had passed away, I started thinking of how my life was going to model my siblings, how I was going to be a parent, or how I was going to love them and fight for them. For some weird reason, I didn't even understand what was going on the inside of me, and I knew that all my experiences should have led me to something else, to make other decisions other than that. But I just wanted to love on my siblings, and I'll defend them in the family. So my brother ended up living with one of my uncles. My sister lived with an aunt, and then I lived with another aunt. And so we split. we community raised, and now it's community raising us up as orphans. And we didn't know anything about my dad at this point. We didn't know if he was alive or if he was dead. But a year into my mom's passing away, my grandma walked into the living room one day and showed me a picture, and she said, "Do you know this person?" I said, "Sure, I do. I remember him. That's my father." She said, "He's dead." And I was like, "How?" She said she just ran into a nurse in the hospital that is a mutual friend to my parents, and this person told her that, "Oh, the father to your grandchildren, the father to your grandchildren passed away a year ago. Nobody knew. We don't know how he died. We were never part of the funeral." So there are no chances of knowing if he would have been a better father if we ever met him again. And for my mom, it's the same thing. There are no chances of knowing if my relationship with her would have been better if she saw me grow up to be the woman that God has helped me to become. And living with aunts, it was not very much of a horrible situation, but I already had a sense of rejection. I already had a sense of I wasn't good enough. I was good for nothing. I had to earn every single thing that I was going to get. Before my mom passed away, Betty, there were times when I went to some of my aunts in the family and said, "Please, can you claim me as your daughter?" And this was like risking my relationship with my mom, because they could go back and tell her, these are her sisters, "Please, can you claim me as your daughter? I don't think my mom likes me." Growing up, my mom would burn my hand on a stove burner. She would cut me with cutlass. So I would go to school some days bleeding, and my friends would be like, "What happened to you?" And my friends are rushing to help me out, but I'll just say I fell. I'll lie to them, because you see people coming with lunch boxes, and you see people coming looking good on a Monday morning. Their parents have prepared them well for school, and you come with blood, you come bleeding. And how do you tell your friends that my mom cut me on a Monday morning before sending me off to school? So no matter what anybody did, I couldn't read love in between the lines. It was difficult. And during my second year of going into high school, I made a decision and said the aunt I wanted to live with, I don't want to live with her anymore. Not that she did anything in particular. I just felt like there was something weird. I don't know, there was something weird about me living with her, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. I felt like maybe that was God now saying I needed you to come into another environment, into a relationship with me. But I just wrote a letter, put it under her pillow, because I didn't even have the guts to tell her I don't want to live with you anymore. It's against the culture. You can't stand up to an elder. You can express yourself. You can be honest about who you are and how you feel. So I wrote this letter to my aunt. I put under her pillow, and I left the house. I didn't take anything. I just left so nobody would know I'm running away. I left and I went to my grandmother's house, and this caused a lot of contention in my family, because my aunt felt like she had been part of raising me since I was born. My mom gave birth to me as a student, so 2 weeks after I was born, my aunt took me away from my mother so she can continue school. So she's like, "I've been a part of your life since from the day you were born. How dare you walk away from me and disrespect me?" I said, "I just didn't want to live with you anymore. I'm grateful for everything you've done, but I feel like that season is over." And then she looked at me, Betty, and told me, this was in 2007, September 2007, she said, "You will never be able to make it in life." She said, "You will never amount to anything." And she wanted us to have a bet. She was like, "These are my hands. You can have a bet with me. You're not going to make it." And everybody was furious. My grandmother was crying, like, "What is she going to do to you? Is she going to kill you? What is going to happen to you?" And it was my final year of high school. I'm in a very critical point in the life of every young woman in Africa, in Cameroon to be precise, because then you've been looking forward to the day you leave your home and go to the university. So it's almost like, is she not going to go to the university? Why would her aunt say that to her? But I just remember saying this to her: if you're God, then we will see those words come to pass. But if you are not, then I'll be the woman that God has created me to be. And that was the end of story. I think that was the last time she and I ever had a conversation. And it was a tough, and I started having all these dreams of people oppressing me. I would sleep on the couch and it would be like somebody walk into my room and try to strangle me. But these are things you cannot explain to anybody because nobody sees what is happening to you. And I would say, I see people come into my room, I see women walking on my wall, and I would not be able to explain that. I would study all night and then go to class in the morning and I feel blank. It's almost like I've never read anything in black and white ink ever. So it was difficult because I could not explain what was going on, and then having to go through the thought process of what is going to happen with my life when I graduate high school, who is going to send me to college, what doors are going to open, and not really knowing. My family was torn apart because I had decided to move away from this end, and she was in the position to sponsor me, and she's like, I'll never do it again. So the whole thought of everybody is like, maybe you should go beg her, maybe you should go plead with her, maybe you should go ask for forgiveness. I don't have a problem asking for forgiveness, but I have a problem endorsing the fact that I will never be able to make it in life.
Yes.
Which I know is not true.
Yes.
So while in school one morning, one of my instructors, who happens to be a pastor, walked up to me and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just waiting for class to start. He said, so what are your plans after high school? I said, I'm thinking of going to get a job. He said, get a job? You know, that was like, for a 17-year-old in Africa, I mean, in America, it makes sense, right? People work at 16. It's like, going to get a job where? Who is going to hire you with a high school diploma at 17 or 18 years old by the time you graduate? I said, I don't know. I mean, I was a very good science student. I just believed that somebody would do it. I don't know how it was going to happen. He said, no, I think you need to have a rethink of your life. You're young, you're talented, you're educated, you're going to be an educated woman. You cannot just put an end to who you are by wanting to go work at 17 after high school. You're not qualified yet for that. And then he started saying, you know, Jesus really loves you. He said, people may have forsaken you and abandoned you. Maybe you're not loved. Maybe you've not been accepted. But one thing I want you to know is that there is a love that has no condition, and you should give him a try. I mean, I was hearing these words in a different way, but I'd heard them before.
But this time they were different.
They were different. My mom, when she was really, really sick and my family was going from one witch doctor to the next to look for help, they couldn't get the help that she needed. So she came in contact with some distant relatives of hers that were pastors, and they led us to the Lord. But then I was 12. I didn't know what it was walking with Jesus. And with her passing away, my family stopped me from going to that church because they believed Pentecostal churches were cults.
Yeah. Well, now, how did you get to college? You went to college? Where did you go to college?
I went to college in Oklahoma, in the United States.
In the U.S.?
Yes, I went to college in the U.S. So after the whole process of figuring out what to do with high school, I graduated. I tried to get into university in Cameroon, and I couldn't. And I was not accepted into the law program that I wanted to study. So I had an aunt who was in the U.S. We always prayed on the phone. I would send her encouraging messages. And she connected me to a friend of hers who is an attorney in California, and she had some situations that were going on in her home and needed more people to come in agreement with her in prayer. So she said, I'll connect you with this lady. You can minister to her and just help her spiritually. So we started talking. I will pray with her. I'll send her scriptures, anything I listen to that is really good. I'll refer her to the same message and show her scriptures in the Bible. And God really turned things around for her family, for her marriage, for her business. And she was like, I would want to help you come to school in the United States. I mean, it sounded like a joke of the century. It was like, I knew one day it's going to happen, but this soon, I didn't think it was going to happen. But long story short, 2009, she did everything she could, and I was able to move to the United States in November of 2009 as an international student.
And started school in Oklahoma. And did you graduate in Oklahoma?
I graduated in Oklahoma. So I started school with them in California. And a year into my staying with them, things got really difficult. They loved me as their own. They were there for me. Even when I would make mistakes, it wasn't like I wasn't reprimanded, but I could see the love in the correction. But things got difficult, and they said we really will not be able to support anymore. Not like they didn't want to do it. They had intentions to do it, but it just wasn't working out at the time. So I remembered having read about Oral Roberts University from a book. And I said, you know what, let me look the school up. So I went online, I looked it up, I applied, requested for scholarship, and they were like, we cannot help you. And I said, God, I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I believe that this is the time I'm supposed to go to the school, and I will go because I cannot fall out of immigration status. I cannot get in trouble to default my status as an international student. So I insisted, I made calls, and one day called the right person, and she said, you know what, we have a scholarship program, but nothing is guaranteed. You just have to compete with other hundreds of students and see what comes out of it. And there I went into this competition and came up with an $80,000 scholarship.
That is God.
That is God.
Oh my gosh. So you graduated from ORU. You didn't have to pay for it.
I didn't have to pay for it.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
And then you came to New York.
I moved to New York 5 months after graduation, just praying and waiting for a job. I mean, it's one thing when you're like so excited, you have a degree now, but what next? Nobody wants to hire you as an international student. And one of the things I did, because sometimes when we go through difficult situations, you can be so overwhelmed that you don't remember the good things that have happened to you. I always remember that God has paid for my education, and I know that He who brought me this far will take me to my next level.
Absolutely.
So I started just writing a book in my room. I will pray and I will write a book, and I will write a few pages a day. And then one day I got this opportunity to move to New York as an office manager.
And now, in the process of all of this, taking care of yourself, taking care of your siblings and all of that, how did you get this idea to educate young girls? And especially, I'm interested in how did you get them in college? Isn't that expensive? I mean, how did you do that?
It's not as expensive. You know, when I got my $80,000 scholarship, I asked God, why me? Because in a competition of 300 students, you think that other people deserve it. I've always learned to think that other people deserve things more than I did. I go into it, but my thing is, why would they give me instead of that person? So even when I got it, my thought was, God, why me? And I remember hearing the Lord saying this to me in my dorm room. I did this for you because I would want you to do the same thing for other people. So somebody else thought through your education, the person doesn't even know you, because mind you, scholarship programs, donors don't know the particular students that are going to receive the scholarship. So somebody has invested into the woman I've called you to be, even without knowing you. So you are going to do
Favour,
the same
that
thing.
was God doing His purpose for your life from the very beginning, even the hard stuff.
Yes.
Even all you went through that seemed so painful.
Yes.
There's so many people in the Bible that went through a very painful childhood, but that prepared them for where they were going.
Yes.
And that's what happened to you, and now you understand what it feels like to not have the money, to want to be educated, and so your passion would be greater, right?
Yes, I was really, and on every level, I'm able to relate with every single young woman from every kind of background. I mean, I could not, at the time I was in Africa, I could not say what was abuse and what was discipline. But now I can look back at everything, and this is not to say I'm trying to write people off or run my family down, but I think I was abused. You know, emotionally and psychologically.
If you go to school, wiping blood off your arms.
Yes,
and
I think
burned.
psychologically, emotionally, I was really abused. And some girls come from that background where all they see is what people tell them about themselves.
Let me ask you something, Favour. You don't seem to be like that now. So how in the world did you come from that kind of a background and not be totally messed up right now?
You're not. I was messed up though.
You're actually a very, very outstanding young woman, which you wouldn't think would happen from somebody in that kind of a background. What do you attribute that to?
I had to identify the pain. I had to own how I felt about myself. Because
now this is wisdom. This is wisdom in the night for people that have been. There's people watching this show that they go, I know everything she's saying. So what is your wisdom? You had to own the pain?
I had to own the pain because sometimes we deny it, especially when it's coming from people that should love you very much, and they do it making you believe that they're doing it because they love you. So you don't want to, there's that fear of wanting to say, oh, my mother hates me, or my aunt doesn't like me, or this person isn't treating me right. So I owned how I felt without necessarily blaming them. Because sometimes what we do is the blame game. Like, I would never want to stop myself from going where God is taking me, or from sponsoring these girls because people did not love me enough in my past. So I had to own the fact that I have self-rejection. I don't believe all the things that God said about me, and then bring it to Him so that He can help me see myself differently. And this is what God told me in college when I felt like everybody else was more deserving, and everybody else, I always ask God, why am I not the president's daughter? Why am I not the famous preacher's daughter? And God said, it's because I've called you to be that woman in your generation. So I realized, okay, people may not know the plans He has for me, but He knows the plan He has for me. And if I can just align myself with this plan He has for me, my life will be a lot better. So the beginning of it was owning how I felt and knowing that those things that happened to me were real, and God wanted to deal with them, but He needed my permission to do that.
And so you saw that change occur?
I saw that change. I saw that change to where instead of looking around and feeling like nobody loved me, I started loving people in college. So I'll meet people, I'll be like, oh my goodness, you look so good. I mean, it's not trying to do it to put up, to put up a wall, but it's doing it to say, genuinely, I have to look at Betty and look at something good about you and say, I like your ring, because I wanted to compliment people. I knew that if I was going to receive that same reward, I needed to give it out. So I was giving out what I was looking for.
That is a piece of wisdom. That is amazing, Favour. Give what you are looking for.
Yes.
And do it genuinely and sincerely.
Yeah.
And out of that, you got healed.
I did get healed. I did get healed. I will own up and say, Lord, I feel ashamed about this. I've never, it's definitely something, I never saw myself coming on TV and really saying I felt like my mother hated me. Maybe she didn't, but that's how I felt.
And that's what you owned.
That's what I own.
That is very key, very, very key, because maybe your mother would go, I didn't hate you, but you felt it.
Yes.
And things happened that you saw what you thought was proof of it.
Yes.
And so you had to own it.
I had to own it.
Because you couldn't get healed.
Yes, I had to try to give people what I wanted them to give me. So before going and say this person doesn't like me, I start by liking them. I would love on people. I would share whatever I had with somebody who needed. Even if they didn't need, I'll offer and let them say no. And I would realize I was able to distinguish who was rejecting what I was offering and who was rejecting me. Because there are times when if you offer me a piece of donut, right? And I say, no, I don't want it. I'm okay. Like, thank you. In my past, I would regard that as Betty just rejected me.
You have conquered that, and now God has given you a foundation to send girls to college.
Yes.
You're young. You're 27. How much does it cost to send a girl to college for a year?
So cheap. Tuition, if it's just tuition, is $100 a year.
A year?
Yes.
And how long is the education?
The education is 3 years.
So for $300, you could send a girl to college?
For 3 years.
And educate her?
And educate her. But because
Wow.
we want to give the girls the opportunity to also have a safe place to stay, we don't want to have control over their lives, but we want to influence them. So many people feel like being an orphan is a hindrance, it's an obstacle, but this is what I've learned. Death is not a problem to God. If it was a problem, He would never let it happen to anyone. So He goes beyond being an orphan. He goes beyond rejection. He goes beyond what you don't even know about yourself to reach out to you in a way that brings revelation to you about how He sees you. So we don't want any girl to feel like, oh, I just have to go to school, but where do I stay? How do I get myself out of this, maybe this family background or the situations that their circumstances has confined them to? So we also extend like living expenses to them.
So how much is that?
We have an amazing couple Betty, a wonderful couple here in New York that actually, they were one of our first donors to make a $500 donation to sponsor a girl this year. She's going to be a freshman in college studying economics and
Both
management.
semesters?
Yes,
For both semesters.
Both semesters living. So we got her tuition paid. We got her a room. She's gonna do a co-living, and she gets an apartment with somebody else. And then we got her supplies.
That is the most amazing, wonderful. People want to help. There are people watching this show who want so much to do good. They have money. Maybe they don't have that much, but they still care because they know what it feels like. And Favour, people could do that through you.
It's amazing.
Education is the key, isn't it, Favour?
It is. It is, because a lot of people look at Africa and say Africa is poor. I said poverty is a mindset. If you can change how people think, you'll be amazed at the wealth that is going to come out of the continent of Africa, because every single person has a great purpose on the inside of them.
Now that, I've never heard anybody say it before, that poverty is a mindset. That's another piece of wisdom, Favour. And I just want to say to all of you that are watching this, do you feel like poverty's held you back? Do you feel like people not appreciating you, not showing you love, not including you, in fact, rejecting you in very serious ways? People who should have taken care of you? You heard what Favour said. She's lived through that. And yet by changing her thoughts, thinking through it, letting God help her work through these deep pains, her life is different. And it is so different now that she wants to help young women. Now you can do something like this. You can help Favour, you can help educate a young girl, but you can come up with a way that you can help this world. God has a plan. He has a definite plan for your life. And all you have to do is say, Lord, I want to do your plan. I don't want to do my plan. I want to walk with you, God. Tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. And I promise you, I've done that, and I've lived the kind of life you can't even imagine. It's wonderful. So thank you so much for tuning in. It wasn't an accident that you turned on the TV tonight. And I hope you receive some wisdom and that you have a great rest of the night, whether you're going to sleep or going to work. I'll see you next time. Bye.